So I wanted to have this chat with you all. This is both for children and parents. I'm going to start out with the children first, and then parents, I'm coming for you. So, if you are a young adult, and you could still be 35 plus, if you have a desire to express to your parent or parents about your pain and the things that you suffered being in their care when you were younger, I will be the first to tell you, and maybe the second or the third, and maybe this is your last little nudge to listen up, that whenever you need to move on from whatever happened to you during childhood, as much as you desire your parents to be participants in that process, they don't have to be. You are able to move on with what happened to you if they never say, baby girl, baby son, I apologize for what pain I have caused you, even if not intentional. And it's more empowering sometimes to do it this way, because when we seek something from someone who doesn't really care to hear from the pain, it's going to hurt a little bit more. So this is sometimes where people go no contact with their parents because they just realize like there's no point of saying that. But don't just leave it there. Don't just say you're not going to talk to them. Move on with your life and choose an empowering way and decide to release them. And the release is not to let them off the hook. It's for you to move forward. It's more for you than it is for them. And in resolution therapy, which is something I offer too, it's about what are you going to do with it now? If you cannot get an apology from your parents and they're not willing to participate in hearing your pain to even say, you know what, let me fill in the blank. Let me help you understand where I'm coming from. Then you have to decide that you want to move forward with your life, whether they say they're sorry, whether they acknowledge it, whatever. Because a lot of times when you get so excited because you think, you know what, we're both adults here, we should be able to have an adult conversation, and you just want to talk about it, a lot of times you're going to be met with disappointment because you realize they're not in a position to hear your pain. And of course they're kind of stuck in the old paradigm, and they're like, well, I loved you and I did all this, and you know, they're just entitled to your respect, and they're entitled to, oh, you know, your love. And that's not how it should be. Nowadays things have changed, and us millennials moving forward aren't down with that. So you can move forward without an apology, and you have the power to decide if you want to stay in contact with them, if you don't want to be in contact with them. But I really encourage you to choose the path of power, which is to release them and to decide to live a life that's beneficial to you. Claim your power back, which you really didn't have growing up. You didn't have the autonomy either, but now you have a choice. And you can just move on. And I know sometimes it may be hard as a young adult trying to do life, and you want to reach out to your parents. And who knows, maybe in their separation, it will cause them to reflect. And maybe it doesn't. But don't allow your past in any situation to keep you from moving forward. Those things that did happen to you, as painful as they are, I'm not asking you to act like they never happened. What I'm encouraging you to do is to put them in the proper timeline and be able to move forward. So you may not forget what your mom called you a loser, or that your dad treated you a certain type of way. I'm not saying that you will never do that, but you don't want those to be the reasons that you're constantly reacting and you're living a life so small, so afraid, so timid. You don't want that. Your goal is to get back to the most authentic version of yourself. And how you do that is first make space for that old version of you to come back into play. But you can't do that if you're harboring all this resentment and anger and bitterness and shame and guilt. There's no space for positivity. And here's another thing. You also have the power to create different philosophies from that which you were taught when you were younger. So you can spend time doing that. If they're like, you'll never be anything and you're this and you're lazy and whatever they said to you, as an adult, you can decide, I'm not lazy. I'd rather do things a certain way. Or I'm not a loser. I'm just different, and you never got the chance to understand me. And you're not having those conversations with them, but in your mind, you're setting the record straight and deciding to live from a more empowering state by choosing philosophies that align with who you are. Now, parents, you have to listen to the pain of your children. And it comes to a point where you ask yourself, do you want to be right, or do you want the relationship? And it's important to understand that you have a way different perspective and perception of your reality than your children do. And even though you could have had the best intentions, a couple of things to consider is that children do a lot of life with a childlike understanding. They're putting things together without much critical thinking, and their brains are not fully developed until like after 20s. So can you see how hard it could be for them to grasp what's happening? And to the parents who thought they were protecting their kids because they didn't really say a whole lot, that could also be devastating. So not every single one of you are parents that could have said anything negative, but the lack of communication could have caused confusion, could have caused insecurity, anything. So just learn to be curious about your child and allow yourself to not feel attacked. They don't expect you to go back and change the time. They just want you to hear their hurt. And yeah, maybe they are looking for an apology, and not one where it's like, sorry that happened, but one where you understand how even though your actions and your intentions were not to hurt them, that potentially that you did. And, I heard this thing where it says, whenever your kids are yelling, oh, don't be disrespectful, I'm your parent. It's like those who yell the loudest are hurt the most. So when you want to get triggered and irritated and start claiming, you need to respect me, and you start being entitled because, that's the old paradigm, just keep in mind, your child is hurting. And I'm sure you did the best you could. And I know there's things you're thinking now, like, I would never do that now that I know the things that I know now, right? So just get curious about your children. And if you don't get curious, at least understand that they may not want to talk to you. They may go no contact. They may act like you don't exist. They may not answer your calls. And you may act like it doesn't bother you. And hey, it may not. But you don't want to leave them out there like that. And just think about it. When you were a child and you were young and you were in your 20s and 30s, you thought you knew everything. So go back to that time in which you were thinking and begin to learn to hear your child's pain and respect them. Especially as they get older, they don't always want to hear your 2 cents. Why? Because they take it like you don't trust them to make the right decisions. You don't give them the freedom to do what you got to do, which was make decisions and learn for them. I know parenting is hard. There is no manual. And I even know for me, because I'm a parent of 4, I'm not excluded. I realize that even though I am intentional, I am conscious, and I'm aware, and I understand their developmental, their developmental milestones, that my kids are probably going to tell me that I ain't. But I have already committed to hearing them out and being open to what they experience, because I'm not a perfect parent and I'm learning them, and they have different personalities. And I at least owe them that. They don't owe me anything. They don't owe me love and respect. I have to earn that. And that's the new paradigm that we're in. And I feel like when people are not down with that, that's where the tension began. This is not old school. This is not the 1960s, 70s, or 80s, and bread is not $1 anymore. You got to catch up with the time because things are changing, including parenthood.